Hi, welcome to Journey Home. So I am Andra Annette, and if you're just tuning in now, we are talking about me and my story and how who we are plays into so much of how we think, how we feel, what we create in this world, and what we internalize. And sometimes it leaves us very stagnant. A lot of times we feel like nobody identifies with what we're doing or who we are as people. And some people are out there very lonely or feeling like nobody understands them or gets them. And I think by sharing your story, it allows other people to be free to be who they are. So, not everybody has the same life or the same experiences. We're brought up differently culturally. We're, raised different by our parents. But it's not an excuse not to live your best life. And that's really my message, because I've had a lot of hurdles in my life, but it didn't stop me from wanting more or becoming more. At 57, I'm out there doing something totally different than I've ever done. I've always done healthcare, but I'm doing it online, which is a different experience all in and of itself. So I wrote my first books. I've done my first TV shows. Just out there living what I consider my best life and having a lot of fun. So I had a very meager start in this world. I was born sick at birth. So the best way I can explain it is I always had a very big identity crisis. There's a lot of different stories around my birth, and I've heard from different people different things. So I had to kind of acclimate and choose the one that sat best with me and hurt the least, so that I could not second guess myself. So I had said that I had a sister, Laura, and she was kind of cruel. She told us all that we were adopted at one time or another. But for me, I internalized that because my mom was out late night Christmas shopping, got hit by a car, and I was born shortly after that. My mother was in a full body cast, and she couldn't care for us. So, and I was sick at birth. I had a hole in my chest. You can't really see it on camera, but I needed a trach. They did something called blue treatment, which is laser treatment today. But I spent the better part of the first year of my life in the hospital, and my mom was too sick to care for us anyway, so the rest of my sisters were separated. So I lived with someone out on the island, Mary Marrow, and her family, Pete, Bert, and Ada, but I always thought they were my family. So I remember the first time when my sisters came to pick me up, Lori, Dee, and I was walking. I had on a red and white polka dot dress, black patent leather shoes. I had pigtails already, so I wasn't still a baby. So it was, I don't know, confusing for me at that time, but I didn't really ever feel that bonding with my natural mom because I wasn't with her when that bonding really happens. So I always felt kind of like an outcast even in my own family. So if you don't feel like you belong in your family, you kind of feel like you don't belong anywhere and you don't fit in anywhere. But I did go to live with my mom, and I did kind of always think I was adopted. I had a running joke with my mother that my real mother was going to come for me soon, so she should be better to me. And she didn't find that funny, but I did at the time. My mom was a good woman. She had her own issues. We all do. We are products of our environment. Nature versus nurture. I think it's a little bit of both. But my mom did keep us with this woman. She didn't want to rip me out of there traumatically, so that woman became mine and my other sister Denise's nanny. But I was told other stories about my father. I still don't really know the truth of that. And people say, well, at your age, does it matter? Well, I kind of always saw older men in my life, in and out of my life. And I never knew. Maybe they were my father, maybe they weren't, you know. So it made me uncomfortable when old men would stare at me, and maybe they were just a dirty old man. I don't know, but it made me feel like, am I connected to that person in some way? So I heard two totally very different stories. Some told me that my dad killed himself. Someone else told me that he died of a brain aneurysm, which is what I chose to believe, because he did have these chronic migraines, and my sister would later succumb to something similar. She would have throw a clot and die pretty young. So she did have a cast on though, and had compartment syndrome. So it might have been related, might not have been related. I'm not really sure. She always had those migraines. So did I as a very young child. They would disappear as I got older. But so not knowing really who your mom or your dad is as a child, and being around people that had really good families kind of made me uncomfortable, kind of made me feel like I didn't fit in. I would have loved to have had that. And we really didn't have much growing up. We grew up very poor, but we were always given the very best. My mother worked very hard to give us everything that we needed, and as we got older, we were made to work for things that we wanted that were extra. And back then, we really didn't understand, but as we got older, we understood the value in working for what we wanted, and we appreciated it much more. You never really understand those things growing up, right? But you do often when you have your own children or something different like that. But I did always feel like I didn't fit in. And I had a lot of friends. I was very popular growing up. I always rooted for the underdog, and I met some of my best friends doing that. When people would pick on them, I would step in. I was, I don't know, I guess you could say an angry child. I didn't look for trouble, but if it came in my way, I certainly didn't walk away from it. So we were raised in the Bronx in a very close-knit community on Fordham Road, where everybody raised each other's children. Everybody watched out for one another. We communed together and had block parties. There was something called PAL back then, the Police Benevolence Association, and they would come together in the community, and we'd have block parties, and they'd watch out for everybody, and we'd have activities with the police. We'd do sports and things like that. People would ring your bell and walk in. Everybody knew everybody. We would move up to Westchester because there was a sniper around that time that was just on the roof pegging people, and other things were happening in the neighborhood, and my mother was afraid for her children and would move us up to Westchester. I did come back to the Bronx. I believe I was 15, maybe a little older, because I lived in Bronxville before that. But I did come back to the Bronx. I was emancipated at the age of 15 and lived on my own since then. So it was something I needed to do for me. I loved my mother very much, but we really did not get along. We bumped heads on everything. And when I moved out, things got better with me and my mom. My mom believed if you live in this house, you follow my rules, and some of her rules were a little hard to follow, and I was always punished as a child, and I wanted my freedom. I wanted to have what my other sisters had. So most parents do love one child, have their favorite, and being the baby, I figured it should be me, right? but it absolutely wasn't. So I was told that my dad named me, and that's why I'm adamant about people pronouncing my name correct, because that's all I really have from him. So he called me Andra, which means the man, and my father had 4 girls. So if only in name he wanted a boy, I don't know. But it was also his favorite French actress, which also had our last name, Martin. So So I was told that he died on Valentine's Day. His birthday was also on Valentine's Day, so I thought that was kind of ironic. But two different sisters told me two different stories. One was very close with my mom, and one was very close with me, and had never lied to me about anything, and I had no reason to believe that she would lie to me about this. This was not told to me as a young child. This was told to me as a teenager. And it was only when I questioned what I heard that the other sister would say different after my oldest sister passed. So nobody disputed what she said while she was alive. So I believe her story. And it doesn't really matter because he wasn't in my life at all. But I did miss having a father around. I was a tomboy growing up. I don't know if I felt like I always had to prove myself to him, even though he wasn't around. But I excelled in every sport. Softball wasn't my favorite. I used to hit the ball with my hat down over my eyes. But I was great at football, basketball, lacrosse, soccer, everything. So I always felt like he was somewhere watching over me. And that's how it always felt. And my mom would get remarried later on. And I believe I was about 6 when she married him. And then I questioned whether or not he was my dad because we looked identical. And he had a tattoo of a young girl on his arm with a ponytail that resembled me, and that was how I always wore my hair. So either pigtails or ponytails. So it did resemble me. And he would have other children later that were the spitting image of me when I was a child. So why am I telling you all this? Well, I think that we all have questions from childhood about how we're raised, and I think that played a big impact on the way it had a big impact. It didn't play a big impact. It had a big impact on how I interacted with other people. It certainly gave me some trust issues because I felt like people were always lying to me, and these were people that were close to me. So if I felt like I couldn't trust them, it was even harder for me to trust other people I didn't know. And we were told as children, what happens in this house stays in this house. When we lived in the Bronx, it wasn't like that. Everybody was in and out of our homes. When we moved to Westchester, it was different. My mom was a single parent. There wasn't a lot of single women raising 4 children in our neighborhood, and we had a lot of nosy neighbors, and maybe my mom was just protecting herself, but they would talk anyway because my mom was a very beautiful woman. My nose is itching like crazy. My mom was a very beautiful woman, and there was a lot of jealousy around that. So things were very strange for me growing up. I mentioned that I was always punished, and that was in teen years. But I kind of always second-guessed myself. I was very scholastic. Well, that's not entirely true. I did very well in school, but I did not like school. I would go in the front and out the back. I was in IGC classes growing up for intellectually gifted children because the work was extremely easy for me. I had something similar to an eidetic memory. I could look at something and remember it. And it just was very easy for me. I would study before tests and, do very well. And, my sisters would struggle with school and study and get less grades. And they were always, put on a pedestal. And because I did well and it wasn't so hard for me, nobody really acknowledged what I was doing. My birthday is after the holidays, so I never celebrated my birthday as a child. It was right near Christmas, so Christmas and my birthday were together. So I never really celebrated my birthday. I remember a 16th birthday. I wasn't even living home at the time, but they did throw me a party. And they invited a bunch of people I didn't even know, which told me a little something about how well they knew me and my friends, and this was my family. And my best friend wasn't invited, which I thought was really weird. But it was different, right? So I celebrated that birthday, and then I really didn't think much about my birthday after that. It was just another day. And then I had a birthday party, my 50th birthday. I celebrated that. And now I celebrate every year because I think it's a celebration to be alive. But things were very different in my family growing up. There were a lot of traumas in my past, not necessarily all family related, and we'll get into that as the show goes on. But just based on the little things I'm telling you, you could see how the same children from the same household could see things very different and from a very different perspective because they are treated different. They're individuals, right? So even though we are different people, we're very much the same. We internalize things the same. So if your mom is present but not really present and really not listening, you might not feel your worth or that you're valued. So that's kind of what I felt growing up, that I wasn't really valued. I really didn't have worth. That probably led to me drinking early. I am highly allergic to alcohol. In Italian and Irish families, mostly Italian, and I am Italian, they serve alcohol to children at dinner, wine. So my first experience was not great. My throat actually closed. I was highly allergic to not the alcohol, but one of the enzymes in the way it's processed, and that's in other alcohols as well. And I stayed away from alcohol for a long time. But I would then find things I could drink later on as I grew up and still had that allergy. So alcoholism is a physical addiction and a mental obsession. They go together. So once you have that first drink, you can't stop. So if you have a predisposition to that, when you already have the allergy or you have family members that are alcoholics, you really should abstain from alcohol. So I do have other alcoholics in my family, and I walked into my first AA meeting when I want to say 13. It might have been even younger. I didn't really stay and understand while I was there, and even though I thought I was going for someone else when I went, it was really for me. So I would get into that later on in my life. But I want you to know that no matter what you've gone through in your life, it's never too late to turn that page, turn that story. So when things happen to us when we're children, we see ourselves not always as the victim, but as the one that created that problem. We identify ourselves where it's somehow our fault, like we had some control over that. The way other people reacted to us as children, and we're just children. We really don't. But that does impact us as we're growing in all of our relationships. And I know that it impacted mine. And it took me a really long time and many decades before I really did that inner work and went back and looked at all that pain and all that hurt that I was carrying around in my life. Not just from my family, there's so much more, but we will get into that. I am someone who was raped. I was hit by a car. I've been through cancer. I had a very traumatic brain injury from that, and I broke my spine and was told I would never walk again. And I am upright today. So we do go through different things, and I had different kinds of cancer. So I had the year that I broke my spine, I would start to feel better and be told that I had cancer. And I was interviewed by a girlfriend of mine, and I was telling her that I always considered myself the get back up girl. A lot of times in my life when I wasn't grateful for the things that I had, I feel like I was attracting bad to me. So a lot of people talk about the law of attraction, but as maybe or sort of, or it's woo woo, but I really do believe in it because I was that person that had those poor me's, that little pissy pot. Why don't I have more? Why don't I have what those people have? And I was drawing more negativity to myself. So the universe is a vacuum filled with energy. And the higher vibrations are things like love and joy. And the closer you are to those vibrations, the more good that you draw to you. And if you would have told me this 20 years ago, I would have told you were crazy and it was all woo-woo. But as I changed my story and the way I thought about my external world, by changing how I felt in my internal world, everything started to change dramatically in my life, and I started attracting more positive to me. So, but even in that negativity, I was always working to be more. I always wanted to be more. My mother busted her ass to raise 4 girls by herself, and I didn't want that life. So I did go to college. I was the first person in my house to graduate. I'm the only person in my house that graduated college. So there was another sister who attended, but I'm the only one out of the 4 girls who did graduate college. So you can change your story at any time. So over the coming weeks, we're going to be talking about some health, and I've had a lot of health-related issues. So online, I am that, food as medicine girl, and I was someone who was very sick. I found myself in a 300-pound body. I was riddled with depression. I was in a lot of pain because I had broken every bone in my body, and I wasn't eating right. I lost my sister, and a couple of years later, my mom, and after my sister died, I sunk into such a depression that I started drinking again, and I went through a lot of stuff back then, and I found myself in a 300-pound body. All those autoimmune diseases that I had been eating for most of my life, because I always knew I had them, even way before they were diagnosed. My thyroid disease, I was eating for that. At that time, I didn't know that I had gut health issues, but when I looked back over my past, I always had those issues, and then I was able to correct it because I saw what was going on in my body, in my life. But to wake up that morning and look in that mirror and hate the person staring back at you was enough for me to say, okay, all bets are off. Either you're all in or it's time to check out. And I decided I was all in. I don't give up on anything. You can give up on a lot of things in life, but don't give up on yourself. And I always suffered with depression, which is a big part of, everybody says the gut, but it's thyroid as well. Mostly thyroid and gut. Gut is connected, but gut and thyroid work very closely together. A lot of people don't get that, People talk about the gut-brain axis and the heart and everything, but everything in your body has a different axis. And because it's not explained that way when they're talking about gut, you have a gut-thyroid axis, right? So you have a thyroid-brain axis. You have accesses to different pathways in your entire body. So they're not separate. People just, they heard gut health is going to help you after COVID and everybody went flying there. And a lot of people out there aren't really teaching the right things anyway, trust me. So that's all. So, but I did struggle with health, and that's why I'm out here helping with it. You could be the wealthiest person in the world, but if you're not healthy, emotionally, physically, spiritually, then you're broken. Then you're not well, and you need help, and you need to do that inner work or reach out and get that help from wherever you need to, because I was all of those things. I was emotionally, spiritually broken, and physically, I was a hot mess. I kid you not. So I want to share my story so that you do realize that there is always a journey home. And it's really about connecting with yourself, connecting with that heart again, and finding out what's important to you and what life you want to live. So I hope my story helps somebody out there We will be talking about health. I will be telling you about some things that I've gone through and how I got through them. Because it wasn't easy. You know, when you're in it, it somehow doesn't feel as painful because you're trying to fight your way out of it. And some of it will still spark emotions in me even today, but I don't eat because of them. I don't sabotage my relationships because of them. I did all those things growing up. When I was growing up, when good things would happen to me, I would sabotage them because I didn't know how to deal with good. I didn't know how to deal with good. Most of what I experienced was bad, and that was what I was very comfortable with. And when good happened, I always expected the other leg to drop and bad to happen, and it usually did. So I was very uncomfortable with good and happiness because I knew that bad was right behind it. And maybe I was part of that. Maybe I was part of bringing that to me because I expected it. I don't know. But we'll talk more about this. But I did want to come in and share some more with you and tell you that you're really not here to please anybody else. You're really not here to just be a part of somebody else's story. You're here to create your own and to have a life you love. There's plenty of abundance out there. There's plenty of happiness. There's plenty of friendships and good relationships and good vocation. Yeah, I just have to decide what you want to do, commit to it, and go for it. Go for yours because it's out here. And we all are capable, creative people. You can create anything you want in this world. And no matter what's happened to you in the past, it doesn't change the vibrant human being you are. God doesn't create anybody for bad. He created you in His image, and He loves you. You're perfect in His eyes, right? So what I would love to see happen is that you're perfect in your eyes. I wasn't always that person. I was that negative Nelly. I was probably a very angry, sarcastic person. Maybe I was Nurse Ratched for a few years there when I was struggling. I don't know. But I know that my life is different now, and I'm happy, you know, and I don't need a drink or anything else to get through that. I allow myself to feel what I'm feeling. No matter how painful it is, it does pass, right? So as kids, we're taught not to cry, which is pretty much telling us that crying's not good. Oh, don't cry, honey. You know, so suppressing our feelings is not the right way. Everybody's kind of emotionally attached. Everybody's on their cell phones. Everybody's, you know, in this digital world. Feel what you are feeling. Enjoy that. The good, the bad, the indifferent, because it's part of your life. And every single one of those experiences are a part of who you are in the process of becoming. And that's a beautiful thing. So I'm Andra Annette, and I hope you've enjoyed this session of A Journey Home. Have a great day.